Hey everyone, I hope you are well, playing and or making the games that you love. You are joining me, your host, Max Perez, and this is the 25th episode. It's insane. 25 episodes, and even the dogs are barking in celebration. So, this is really cool. Yeah, it's just cool, and thank you all very much for tuning into the show. I think it's really nice that we've built a little bit of a community so far, and so thank you all very, very much to joining me for 25 episodes, which is really, I'm really excited for this. So now that we know that it's the 25th episode, and I'll say that one more time, 25th, we're going to be looking at the gaming details. In episode 24, you heard me break down a few things about gaming details that we can take from ordinary and turn to extraordinary. And those were the loading screens, opening menus, and save points. So now we're going to be talking about two things this time in part two. And those are kind of the experience and leveling up systems and the controller layout. So without any further ado, let's just jump into this one. So most games, and it's traditionally more RPG games, but we've seen it more crossover in first-person shooters and other action games, is a leveling up system, whether it be in Call of Duty, leveling up your weapons, or something like Final Fantasy 15, where you're leveling up your characters and party members. As I said, this has now become kind of more of a common thing, with genres kind of becoming more hybrids, which is great. And it's a really cool system. It's been around for a long time, the leveling up system. And it's really cool to see it, but I want to talk about how, because it's been around so long, not many people have tried to break out of the traditional sense of it. You kill, you get XP, and you see that meter go up through it. But I want to talk about how a couple of games have really broken the mold, in my opinion, and really taken the essence of a leveling up system and combined them with their storytelling or just general pillars of their game design. So first one is Final Fantasy 15. Now, say what you may about the game, I thought it was good. It wasn't like the best Final Fantasy 7, the best Final Fantasy ever, but I did think it was still a very solid game, and I really enjoyed it. I sunk about over 50 hours into this game, so yeah, I really did enjoy it. And there's one thing I want to talk about through it is the leveling up system, as I mentioned before, because to me, it's really interesting how they've taken this system and put it as part of their overall theme of video games, which, is truly great. So for those who haven't played it, I'm going to try avoid spoilers, obviously, here. But for those who haven't played it, you're essentially on a road trip. You went out with your friends. I'm really doing no justice to the story here, but sadly you cannot return because your kingdom has been taken over by enemy forces, and because of this you will have to stay at certain places or camp out, finding campsites to spend the night. And there's been many camping sort of mechanics done before, passing day, etc., but they've actually combined this whole camping feeling into their leveling up system. Now, in traditional ones, you generally kill an enemy and the XP will instantly go to your character kind of at the end or after a kill. But in Final Fantasy 15, you can it stores it. It doesn't go to your characters, it's just stored away. And the only way to get that XP into your character to gain the levels up is to camp. Now, how cool is that? Because it's no longer just a story or plot device or theme of the game about camping. It's actually needed and is beneficial to your team, not only for them as characters for sleep, but for you as a player to gain the best abilities out of those characters. Think about that. That's really, really smart, because they've given you a mechanical reason to join into this sort of story-themed experience. So now we're going to talk about how this now plays into strategies as well, because that isn't the only cool thing about this. Because there's certain places where you can get XP bonuses as well. So if you were to camp just under the stars in one of these campsites, you'd kind of get you won't get any bonus for your experience. But if you go and stay at certain motels or hotels, you can get 1.5 to double XP. So now it becomes part of a strategy for when the player is playing the game, because now players have to think, what is it they want to do? Do they just want to constantly rest every day to gain the XP, or do they actually want to store this XP and then wait to go find one of these hotels, to use the multiplier to gain the most, so they can gain more levels quicker through a quicker grinding process than just constantly falling asleep and losing out on the multiplier? So now it becomes a strategy, and that you can see there's loads of videos over YouTube. For example, one title here already is how to get 600k XP in Chapter 3 of Final Fantasy 15. So there's already people suggesting guides out to other players on how to increase your XP. So that becomes a sort of mini game within the main game of how to best gain experience for the player. I really loved this mechanic. I think there's some other great mechanics going to be touching upon, like how we'll be touching on a phrase called game juice later on in a future episode, and how Final Fantasy 15 really does some great stuff with that. But this to me is an amazing thing, how they've kind of reaffirmed the story or plot device of you being on the road with mechanics. So every time you're thinking of having not every time, because it doesn't apply to every game, but I would advise, when thinking about trying to tell a narrative point, don't just do it through text or story devices or cutscene. Try show it through the mechanics. And this is one of the best ways to learn how they've turned an XP system into not only a mini game, but a strategy, and reaffirming the story of that. To me, that is an incredible thing. Now we're going to visit Bloodborne. Now, in the previous episode, I did give Bloodborne a bit of a stick, obviously from the long loading times, and this isn't me insulting games, that's me insulting part of it. Not every game is perfect, and I hope no one took that as me bashing the game. That's just me pointing out a flaw with their game. But here, they also have a ton to learn from, in my opinion. It's, they may do one thing bad, but they may do two things good. So always think about that. Don't just bash on a game. Try to break everything down. So now that we're going to go into this, we're going to talk about these blood echoes. Now, Bloodborne follows the same system as Dark Souls. But as I said in the previous episode, I haven't played Dark Souls, so I don't feel I'm able to really talk or give the best info on those games. So I'd rather focus on Bloodborne, which I can give a better insight into. And one of the things they really do very well is they let go of the player's hand. And that's one of the biggest things that these games are known for, or any game from software make, is they kind of throw you to the wolves figuratively and literally. And one of the things they do really well is with their leveling system, instead of giving you XP, in this game they give you blood echoes. And blood echoes is kind of their experience / in-game currency. So this is where the real kind of challenge for the player comes in, because if you die, you will lose those blood echoes. If you die once, those blood echoes will still be there, but you have to make your way to your previous corpse. However, if you die twice, those blood echoes are gone for good. So now this comes down to a choice that the players have to make. Players have to decide when's the right time to return to spend these blood echoes. Do they have enough to continue, or do they want to keep pushing forward, but this now has the risk of dying and losing these blood echoes? Because when you're first playing the game, you obviously don't know what's around the corner, and you need to study, and I do mean really study, the enemy's attacks to understand how to best fend them off. So now this comes to the choice, this kind of risk-reward system of the reward gaining more blood echoes and unlocking more things such as weapons, different upgrades, or you lose it all. And it's a really interesting gamble to me, just how they've managed to make this. And although people keep referencing it's like Dark Souls with the difficulty, I think this is part of the reason that it needs to be referenced for games, is how they've given the choice to players on making that risk or reward. Just the simple thing of leveling up now has true consequence to it. It's not as easy as just besting an enemy and my character's developing. You have to grind and decide what's the best plot, what's the best strategy for playing this video game. I think this is really smart, and From Software have done an amazing thing with this. This is what also adds to the difficulty, and people don't mention that enough when they're comparing games to Dark Souls. So yeah, I think this is a great one because this system works with the whole challenge of the game, of the fact that you will die a lot. It's the main gameplay loop is that you keep dying. It's learning through the death. And now it becomes kind of a risk reward to it, because you're going to die. You just know it. No matter how many times you played this game, you are going to die at one point. So now you've got to plan accordingly. Do I want to level up or keep pressing forward? So yeah, I think that's really cool. I think this is a great one from Software. I believe they do it in the Dark Souls franchise as well. But like I said, I've only played Bloodborne, so this is where I'm best to talk for. Okay, before we move on to the next point, I just want to recommend to all of you listeners who may not be following me on Twitter, @MaxPairs, to do so, just because I give kind of nice bite-sized level design chunks for people throughout the week and recommend other cool materials that I recommend others to check out. So honestly, if you haven't already, do check it out, because it's a great way to communicate with me and let me know. As I said, I've had some great feedback from a lot of people and suggestions from others, which again is great because I get that interaction with you all, which is very important with this.
If you love game and level design as much as we do, then why not consider supporting Level Design Lobby on Patreon? Patreon is a crowdfunding platform that allows people to directly fund the content and creators that they love. From as little as $1 per month, you can help support us in our mission to unite and teach people across the world about the wonderful and unique field of game and level design, and get some great reward perks in return, such as access to the Level Design Lobby community Discord, bi-monthly webinars, level design weekends, and much more. So head on over to patreon.com/Level Design Lobby for more information and to pledge your support today. Finally, we'd just like to say a massive thank you to all our current backers. It's thanks to the generous support of people like you that we are able to grow and can continue to bring you awesome, new and exciting content. So thank you. And now back to our regularly scheduled program.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the controller layout. And this is a really interesting one because what I'm going to talk about cannot be replicated for every game. It cannot. But I think us being aware of it can really help improve the general design. And this is the controller layout for Brothers Tales of Two Sons. Now there is going to be spoilers here, so if you haven't played the game and you do want to play the game, I'd probably say come back to this episode or this part of the episode once you have. So I don't really want to spoil it for anyone. Okay. So with this, you take on the role of two brothers in the game. Now, both brothers are controlled by the same controller. The left side of the controller controls the big brother, the right side controls the little brother. What I'm going to be focusing on is not how it felt to control the brothers or how they guide that, but it's more how this controller layout has an impact on these brothers as well. So you'll go through most of the game playing as them solving challenges together as the brothers. And as I said, left side controls the big brother and right side controls the little one. Except when it comes to swimming. Now the little brother can't swim. He has a fear of swimming. That's set up through a narrative backstory where sadly they lost their mother out at sea and he survived, so he really doesn't like water. So what he has to do is he has to cling on to the big brother while you're playing, and the big brother will swim them across. Now, it's about when you get to 3/4 of the game where players, and again, spoilers now, so please don't continue if you don't want any spoilers. So as you get through, and you've because it takes a while to get used to these controller layouts. I think there's a lot. At first it's hard to take in, but they do some great stuff in how to help players. But as I said, you'll swim together, solve puzzles, and then you meet this girl along your travels, and you follow her. She ends up turning out to be a spider lady killer monster, and you're making your escape. But sadly, the big brother dies. He's been poisoned by her, and he passes. And this is a great sense of loss. Because it's a great sense of loss for the little brother, but also you. Because that's not the game over. The game continues. And now, you can only use the right side of the controller. So, that sense of emptiness and loss is actually felt through the movement and that now empty realty space of the controller, because you no longer move with it. How amazing is that? Not amazing for the little brother, but I mean, what a way to make you as a player feel loss by actually taking something away. Well, not even necessarily taking something away. It's just no longer usable. I think that has a huge impact, and this was one of the most amazing things of design that I learned from. But it doesn't end here, because now, right near the end, the little brother has to swim across to make it home. Swim across this sea, and it's quite raging waters as well. And as I've told you before, the little brother doesn't really know how to swim, and he doesn't like swimming. So as you're moving, he's really struggling to get through. But if you hold down one of the big brother's buttons on the left side, he actually gets a little bit better. And it makes it feel like it's like the spirit kind of his brother helping him, kind of guiding you. I think that had such an emotional impact on players through doing this. A truly amazing thing here. Now, as I said, this kind of layout cannot be replicated for every game, obviously, but it is worth thinking about. Just how you take something such as simple as a controller layout and turn it to an emotional impact is phenomenal. Now, another thing to think about with controllers, I'm going to talk about now, is Skate and Fight Night by EA, because they've got a different impact in terms of controller. The impact they have is more replicating the movement to immerse the player better. When you think about skating games, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater is definitely one of the biggest franchises for sure when it comes to it. Its controls didn't make you feel like you were on a skateboard. You pressed X to ollie, square to do a kickflip, but that never captured the motion or really showed how hard it is to do a kickflip on a skateboard. If anyone has skated, you know that it's really challenging to do this. Well, then comes along Skate. Because what Skate did is, to do an ollie, it's not just a button press. You have to drag down the right analog stick and then flick it up, representing not exactly that of the movement of an actual ollie, but getting close to it, showing that it takes more effort just to do a simple trick, truly immersing players in this. And now when you think about EA's Fight Night, what they did was with the with the controllers, it would be a stick for each arm. Push forward for a jab, push on the right stick for a cross. You do a certain kind of loop around with the analog stick, and you do a looping hook, which is amazing because, again, that helps make it feel more realistic for the player. It helps immerse the player, showing that just one button press won't actually show the true representation of the game. I think those two are great examples of more immersive controller design. But yeah, when it comes to controller layout, because generally what happens, and I understand why, it's when there's been loads of big games, like take example Call of Duty, that's kind of defined the controller layout for first-person shooters on console games. A lot of other console games of first-person genre follow that. The triggers to shoot, X to jump, etc. However, so let me finish this point before I actually move on. So because of this, most studios are aware that this is how gamers play. So they don't want to change things too much for players, so it's not like a barrier put up when players want to enter. But what I'd recommend to everyone when they're doing a control layout is don't just follow it because it's tradition or that's how players play. Doing something like Skate, Fight Night, and Brothers Tales of Two Sons can do something so much for your game. Don't just follow the traditional ones. Try capture that feeling. Can you express emotion through the controller design? Can you capture that movement of what it takes? Really think about that, guys. I think it's important for us. So there we have it, you amazing, amazing people. Some of the turning ordinary to extraordinary details there. This will be where we're ending this kind of mini-series. It's 2 episodes. The first part, in case you haven't listened to, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, is the previous episode 24. So thank you all very, very much. I hope you have enjoyed this, and I hope it has given you something to think about, because it's helped me. And again, to give another example, like I did in the previous episode, for the same game, Chess Quest, which I mentioned before, I went through a couple of different controller layouts. One I tried with the virtual joypad on the tablet, but I didn't like this. The sense of feedback for me personally was not good enough, and it also restricted the amount of realty that the player could take up with, despite there being a massive amount of input device there in front of the player. I then tried tap for jump, and this was a quicker response time, but I felt that players weren't engaged because what I then tried to jump, the player has to swipe up. It's not a huge swipe, it can be as long as you want, but this was really interesting because it instantly brought the engagement level of the game up into it more, because it captured that feeling of going up, and it was a nicer response because of this. And then there was another mechanic where you charged, so the player had to swipe from left to right, and this would make the character do another animation where they put their head down and charge and increase the speed of this. And again, that helped capturing the engagement. So I just want to show you and tell you how some of this stuff has impacted some of my design choices. It's impacted others, but I'll reveal on those details in the future. So yeah, really take the time to think about how you can take some of these traditional methods and improve them for your game. Alright everyone, take it easy. I will catch you all next time, and see you later.